And for the next decade, we're going to see commodity producers outperforming the Nasdaq and the stock market in general. That's the place to be.
Imagine how retarded you have to be to understand that you've got a shortage in an industry and then go and attack that industry. Like, you have to literally be retarded.
The way to see this would be it's a very, very cheap call option on some pretty substantial coal assets. A long-term call option. Simple as that. You put a few bucks in your back drawer, you walk away and revisit it.
This is a structural shift in the markets that the market's not currently pricing. If you look at the futures market, it's currently basically saying this shit ends in a few weeks, maybe a month or two, and we go back to normal. And the reality is there is no normal. It's unbelievable, and it's like to a certain degree, I'm like, I hope they get what is coming.
The collapse needs to happen before it gets too bad.
And of course, Turkey is a NATO power. In fact, it's the second largest army in NATO by manpower after the United States. And so an attack on Turkey actually would have been it's an attack on NATO. It would invoke Article 5, which would mean that the US should come to the aid of Turkey should Israel attack them, which we also know is not going to happen. So I think this is the end of we're watching the end of NATO. I don't think ultimately it's going to work, but what we're going to likely see is a decimation of the middle class, and our job here is to ensure that we are not part of that.
All right, let's kick it off. Welcome, everybody. This will be the video to accompany Insider Newsletter issue 328, and we've got a lot to talk about today. I thought we'd kick this whole thing off with an apt quote from Bertrand Russell, which is the whole problem with the world is that fools or fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people are so.
Show the screen, Lucas.
Oh my gosh!
Who is Bertrand Russell, by the way?
He was an author,
and philosopher.
Well, was Bertrand? Was he in English?
He was. He was the grandson of a former prime minister. And he was an activist, an anti-war activist later on in his life. I actually didn't know much about him, so when I saw that quote, which was a couple of days ago, I did a bit of research on him. He's an interesting chap. He also had another amazing quote, which was, I think, most people would sooner die than think, and in fact, they do so. Which, yeah, is also apt for today. But yeah, he lived until 97, got arrested when he was, I think, 89 or 90 years old for protesting nuclear war or something. Been in jail twice. Interesting chap.
Sounds like a maverick.
He does. He does.
To the better end.
Let's crack on.
Need more of them. Okay, let's crack on. This is the upside to the chaos, I guess, is the Strait of Hormuz and conflict with Iran, and all of these things that are transpiring are beneficial for our capital, as you can see. And so you can see a couple of things actually in those charts. One is that the broad stock markets are rolling over. That's your green line looking like it's going to go and take a nap. And that feeds also into the short positions that we've got in the NASDAQ. And we could have put up our portfolios against the NASDAQ, and what you'd see is a kind of a similar line to that green line, excepting it hasn't rolled over to the degree that the green line has. I suspect it's going to, but nevertheless, that's the asymmetric on the left and the dividend income strategy on the right, which is done extraordinarily well. And as of year to date, I believe they're up about almost exactly the same. When I looked at it yesterday, Brad, I was like, they're both about 20%.
But
so
20% plus or minus, yeah.
Not a bad start to the year.
Yeah, well, some people fear, and it's like, oh, there's so much uncertainty, I'm so worried. It's like, well, what are you worried about? I can forego having a bit of diesel in my car if my portfolio is going through the roof. I don't care.
Yes. Okay.